What was the worst red flag you ignored in your worst relationship? He threw an absolute fit at the quality of hummus in a Lebanese restaurant. Like, threw food around the table, yelled at the poor waitress, then stormed out without paying. Then we went to a pub and he was asked to take off his hat and, oh dear lord, was that a mistake? I was recovering from an abusive relationship, so this guy was differently bad hit was apparently okay. I eventually had to block him after he accused me of abuse and threatened to call the police. He decided that he was poly and that I had abused him through mutually agreeable monogamy. It was a very short relationship, but early on we were at his folks and standing around the kitchen. His dad was headed to the store. He asked his dad what he was going to the store for and his dad was like, oh, some things, milk, bread. I'll probably pick up something for dinner in the most average and normal tone of voice. I nod. The guy I was seeing explodes and goes, I was just asking. My head spun around. I was so confused. How could anyone have interpreted his dad's calm, nonchalant grocery list as a personal attack? In hindsight, how unfazed his dad seemed should have indicated this wasn't a rare occurrence, so something inside of me just knew I had to get out while I still had the chance. It was the lack of care for his younger brother. First time I slept over and we went to pick up breakfast for us and his younger brother. We didn't realize they messed up his brother's order. They legit gave us an untoasted McMuffin, nothing else. It was literally a 2-minute drive, so I insisted we go back quickly as we just pulled into the driveway. He refused, didn't even offer to give his younger brother his order instead, and got mad when I offered mine up. Told his brother to deal with it, and I got in my car and drove to get the right order for his brother. I didn't mind as it was a 2-minute drive and I didn't want him eating a plain and toasted McMuffin. Plus, we were left to take care of him since their parents were out of town for business. This really threw me off and I eventually ended the relationship over it. Everything I liked and enjoyed, he would make fun of me and take the piss. I was young, 15, 16, and had never had a relationship before. I was very much in love with him too. I felt like I was sad and pathetic. So I stopped doing what I loved and wouldn't tell him anything. I'm 25 now and never been in another relationship as it seriously changed me. I'm getting back to myself. I know 10 years is a long time, but I'm accepting that now. I now do what I love. I read, I write, I paint, I watercolor. I am happy and content again. I feel like I've got myself back. It took years for me to accept myself again because of this boy. I remember he made me go on alcohol runs because he said no one will think you have anything and you'll be fine. Just go get it and come to my work. When I did that for him, he said, thank God you're so easy to manipulate. I was stupid and stayed with him. He used to cry after intimacy and say how good I was, and I used to be so confused. He ended it by cheating on me and telling me you look nothing like the girls I want to play around with at work. It changed me. I'm now a single 25-year-old trying to get by life and regain myself and my happiness. After my first month with my last BF, I had plans to go to the Renaissance Fair with some friends and invited him, but he had to work. He acted super pissed the night before that I was still going without him. Then the next morning he called me saying he was having a stroke and I was like, oh my God, call 911. I'm to your apartment. He says, no, don't come over. So I'll wait. He calls me from the hospital 30 minutes later and says his brother met him there. At this point, it's clear it wasn't a stroke. And I say, can I come meet you? Which hospital? He says no. So I take my friends to the Ren Fair and text and call to check on him. He ends up flipping out on me saying I should never have gone since he was in the hospital. I just thought since we had only been dating a month and his family was there. And he wouldn't cooperate in telling me which hospital to go to or where to meet him to see him. And he was fine. I didn't think canceling my plan was appropriate or even what he wanted. This set the stage for the rest of the relationship. He would never admit to what he wanted or needed and actually would tell me the opposite of what he needed, sincerely, even when I said, but let me take care of you. Or whatever. Histrionic displays and tantrums are a big red flag and you need to leave immediately. The first night we had intimacy, I spent the night at his apartment. In the morning, we were laying in bed naked and his doorbell rings. It was his ex-wife and his 4-year-old daughter. He had forgotten that he was watching her for the morning. I literally grabbed my clothes and hid in his closet until his ex left. Then he plopped his daughter in front of the TV and snuck me out the door behind her. Oh, he was also broke and turned out to be an alcoholic. Honestly, I'm not sure how I feel about this to this day. The biggest red flag was finding out that he was in a relationship when we started dating. We weren't official at the time, and when I found out, his buddies were giving him shit over something and made a passing comment about him still seeing a girl when we started seeing each other. I asked him about it later in private and he told me that he had broken up with her before we officially became a couple, so I thought it was okay. He cheated on me later. To be young and dumb, I really should have seen the red flag from miles away. On our first date, he asked me out for dinner and a movie. We went to the movie first, and by the time we got to the restaurant, it was late as it was about 9 at night. Because he'd asked me out to dinner, I hadn't eaten beforehand and was absolutely starving. But when I said I was going to order a burger, he told me that it was too late for dinner. I was only allowed dessert. Stupid, young, naive me should have seen the red flags right then, but since he was paying, I didn't argue. And because my family thought he was the greatest thing since sliced bread, it led to a horrible marriage to an abusive control freak. Thankfully, he's been my ex far longer than he was my boyfriend or husband. Good riddance to bad rubbish. I think for me it was how focused he was on independence. He had come out of a codependent relationship before me and he was so focused on his independence. Anytime we started to get close, he would pull away. I figured he would relax when he realized I wasn't his ex. But he never did, because just turns out he has a really deep-seated fear of intimacy and he blamed it on his ex being clingy. Also a huge one, he wouldn't respond when I talked about something negative. He would go silent or slyly avoid the conversation, aka he can't tolerate negative emotion. I don't remember which was the worst. I ate a lot of them. The first one maybe was that he always spoke deep about a topic, hours and hours without discuss, just monologue and change the topic quickly. He never heard me. The worst, I don't know, maybe the money issues. If he saw me naked, he asked me to cover up. He turned asexual 2 years later. He just repeated I have stress and screamed and impossible to speak about it. You are sick, blah blah. When we went to the supermarket, he didn't want to carry bags. I'm ashamed, he said. So I was the one carrying bags. I didn't ask about it. I know it was other trauma. He was mad. Our last dates was about helping him to assemble furniture. He threw away his old furniture and bought new. He looked at himself in the mirror a lot and when he bought clothes, he would pass me pictures. On the other hand, if I had my makeup smeared or my blouse on backwards, he didn't notice that or said me anything. When I went bald, he didn't say me either. It was my coworkers who helped me to face my hair problem and go to the doctor. Multiple factors including having to listen to him daily hours and wanting to break the relationship and that he would not let me free. If we went to a supermarket and they didn't serve him in time, he would just walk out and leave everything there. He did this to me 4 times before I finally saw the red flags and left. He told me he deleted all his dating apps. A couple months later, I found out he not only still had them, but he was still actively talking to people. When I asked him whether he was still on dating apps, knowing he was, he lied and said he wasn't. I told him I knew he was lying, made him show me his phone, and he said he was just on them to mess with people. I started crying and tried to leave his apartment, but he apologized and begged me to stay. I then proceeded to stay with him for 5 years. He later told me he'd perceived my emotional reaction to finding this out as a red flag, and guess what? He turned out to be an emotionally unavailable serial cheater and habitual liar with an aversion to respect and open communication. The red flags were there, but I did not see them. On the way home from visiting my relatives for the holidays, I stopped under an old bridge to take some photographs of the structure. He said, I don't know why you're wasting your time on something so ugly. He used a tone harsh enough to feel like a slap. Very soon afterwards, he started in on the you're just being emotional and I'm being logical bullshit, and then came the cheating, privacy invasion, and abuse. Don't let people stomp on what makes you happy and make sure you see the flags before me. He had given me his debit card to run in and get something at the store and I accidentally forgot to give it back. The next morning, he called to scream and verbally berate me because he was embarrassed that he couldn't get his morning cup of coffee at the gas station. Yeah, he turned out to be an emotionally and verbally abusive wall-punching, room-destroying red flag.